Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Hope you guys had a decent week. We're mid-March. 2021 just keeps rolling by. We're kind of in the dead period for Blizzard, though. We know stuff is coming up. Not much new stuff has come out this week for Arena and BGs, and by not much, I mean absolutely nothing. And it's always that dead period where you know interesting, cool stuff is around the corner, and you're sort of just tired of the old meta.
Yeah, they got dates all set. The new expansion is coming out on the 30th. Core set is being released a week before that. So, it's coming. It's coming very soon, actually, in like a little over a week. The core set, which should basically make all of Arena different, right? Whether they do a rotation or not. And yeah, if you're waiting for our review of the expansion, that's going to come on the 28th of March. They haven't revealed any new cards since before, but it's going to be like a whirlwind over the course of the next week and a half, where they reveal all the cards and do a card dump.
Yep. The one thing that did happen this week is the release of the Arena Leaderboards. Clap, 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 clap. The Arena Leaderboards reflect the Arena period beginning on January 1st, the start of the new year, and March 1st. So this 2-month period, approximately. And congratulations to all of the top leaderboard finishers on the Americas, Europe, and Asia. This is out on the Blizzard site, so you can check it out yourself. But if we take a look at Americas, we have DMT FE8, number one at 8.27 average wins. Very, very good, very high, especially in a meta that a lot of people think is quite crazy for decent reason, but it still goes to show that
it is quite crazy.
It is quite crazy, but it still goes to show that throughout the span of 30 runs, which is a fairly decent sample, you can still average quite high. Going down the list, we have Cordian, Isherwood at number 3.
Yeah, go Isher.
Definitely a surprise, and yet not a surprise at all, right? We always expect Isherwood to be doing well. I just didn't know he was spamming Arena that much. So that was why it was a surprise for me, but congrats, Isher. We have Veritas at 4. Once again, another constant like Arena pro. We have Red Devil, Enslin, Bazi, Chinese characters that I'm not going to read, Miracado, and Amam. There are multiple people on the list, like Dreads is further. There are many people that you associate with the Arena community on the list. Congrats to all of them. On EU, the number one is, I can't read that, but I want to point it out because it is 8.97 average wins. An insane average. Once again, showing people that it doesn't matter the volatility and the craziness. You can still find ways to stabilize, still find edges, still find ways to average an extraordinarily high average. And then, of course, on Asia, 8.67. The reason why this is so interesting is just because it is almost one full win better than second place. You don't see that on the other servers. But once again, all 3 servers, 8+ wins. I especially want to shout out Kolst, mostly because I know that Kolst placed on all 3 leaderboards, and he only did 30 runs on each. So that's a huge accomplishment. It just goes to show that you don't need a large sample size. You can do it consistently, and that is the perfect example. You just go on all 3 servers, you do your 30 runs. I think on one he had a little bit more, like 35, but it doesn't matter. And you can consistently place on every single leaderboard. Once again, showing people that a lot of people complain. I complain about the RNG. You know that. But skill always shines through. So very big congratulations to everyone. It also just goes to show that how hard it is, because there's really only 40 like true infinite people on the NA and leaderboards. But once again, 30 run sample size. That's a lot. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah,
We
but
calculated how much time that takes.
also that's not like the amount of people that are actually true infinite. Like if your top 30 runs in a row gets you true infinite, it doesn't mean you're true infinite.
Yeah,
The
there's a lot
real
of things
number
that are
is
not
potentially,
representative.
yeah, it's potentially like way higher because you have a lot of people who don't get to 30 runs, and also potentially lower because of the people who are in that top 40 that are, getting more than infinite. They're not all actually infinite players.
It's your best 30. So
Mm.
it's it's the best, sort of consecutive representation of what you did for that month. But once again, congrats to everyone, especially with the state that Arena is in. We see that there is still a lot of strong interest. We see that there are still a lot of players really just dominating, doing really well, and I'm happy about that. We I joke about Arena a lot, but there's still a lot of very we'll call them almost stubborn people like players at this point who just keep on going at it. But it's good to see.
Yeah, and Arena's about to get exciting again in a week and a half, so it is. It's like keep at it if you're still playing, or take a break and come back in a week and a half when we have the new core set. Because I'm really excited about playing with the new core set. But honestly, I am probably not going to play until the actual expansion is out. Like I absolutely hate like 1 week metas. Doesn't matter what you do with it. Like it feels pointless to get good at. It's not like the new core sets are that like mind bending. It's more about how it works with the other cards. So it's just like some of the cards got buffs and some cards are no longer there. But we'll personally, I'm going to wait until the expansion launches before I dive back into the like in
I think
a
that's
yeah, like in a serious way. I played an arena run earlier last week. It should come up on our YouTube actually next week because it was a kind of ridiculous deck that went 12. I don't know how much skill I put into that, but it was a nice experience to actually get good cards and then not get screwed over repeatedly too much and then get that 12 wins.
cool. I'm looking forward to the core set as well. I don't know how much I'll dig into it immediately. Like you said, I want to play it with the new expansion. But if you have not checked out Arena lately, or if you're just kind of tired of or don't want to play the current meta, which is me, definitely come back for the core set because if you liked Arena, a lot of the things that you probably don't like about Arena, whether it's this specific meta, as in this expansion, with these offering rates, these microadjusts, et cetera, or just Arena in the past couple of years, this is such a huge change because it evens everything out. It compacts everything, which is really what we needed. It reduces the absolute craziness that
Mm.
you see. So yes, look, there's still going to be like Mage Scribe. There's still going to be some of the stuff that you might not love, but when you look in the draft, it really compacts everything. The class cards, they're not as crazy anymore, and in some ways, like they're super restrictive. If you didn't listen to our review that we did for the core set, and listen to that. One big example is Druid just got slaughtered in terms of
Mm.
reach and damage. They are far from the go wide, kill you immediately kind of style that we are used to. So come back. Definitely come back. I will be coming back. I'm going to be very excited to play it. It's going to be a brand new experience, and I think it will be very enjoyable.
Yeah, one thing we should all be ready for though is to also be just like really disappointed in the very beginning because there's too
Sure.
many things that are changing. There's going to be near zero balance unless it's by pure luck. Uh, and on top of that, I strongly suspect that they did not think really hard about it, and that there's going to be a problem with the number of cards being offered, and you're going to get mages with like 3 fireballs on average, like as in the average mage you face will have 3 fireballs in their deck. I think that's going to happen. It may not. It's a very simple fix, right? They just have to add more cards into the pool rather than ignore the fact that they just slashed the size of your basic and core set by so much, but they may not do it. And I don't know. That's right now my biggest concern going into the new core set. And if that is happening, like you got to make some noise. It's not hard for them to fix. So there's just so many things that can go wrong in such a big change, and at least some of them will. So like I'm excited for the core set, but I'm really more excited for the core set after it gets like balanced for arena, right? After they do the arena specific tweaks in arena and push the button. The initial meta may be kind of terrible, and if you see the problems already starting to happen in that 1 week before expansion launch, this last week of the month, start tweeting at developers, start raising the awareness at that point, because the faster we get the message to them, the faster the fix is going to come. These are all like, if there's going to be a big problem, it's going to be an easy fix. They just have to, do it. And with the launch of an expansion, they have like a million other things to do. So the faster you get it on their list, the faster it's going to get done.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Anything more about the arena you want to talk about?
No, like you said, we're just kind of in a waiting pattern. Oh, one thing I do want to kind of like mention. I don't know. People probably know if they're actually playing the game, but it didn't really hit me until this week. So we're nearing the end of the first battle pass, and I need to get to 50. I'm at like 48 right now. So I've been really trying to actually complete quests and like keeping an eye out for how much experience and stuff that I gain. And I've also been playing a lot of Battlegrounds rather than Arena lately. And it is so blatant just how much better Arena is than Battlegrounds at getting you experience. Like, ignore whether you're infinite or not and what the actual rewards you get for playing the arena. I mean, just in terms of the experience that you get to push, like the quest experience and the per minute experience, arena like more than doubles Battlegrounds, super easily. Which I don't know. I just assumed that they were going to kind of make everything the same, right? You're playing Hearthstone, right? What do they care how you're playing Hearthstone as Blizzard? But and I don't know what constructed is. I assume constructed is even better, right? Though you'll get rewarded even more for playing constructed than for arena when it comes to the exp stuff. But Battlegrounds is so bad. Like when I first like realized this and that I was falling behind by playing Battleground, I thought, oh my god, why there's so many Battlegrounds players? Why has there been no complaint about that from like a Battlegrounds perspective? Because the experience playing Battlegrounds and the experience playing constructed or the arena, or I'm guessing like duels or whatever, is so different. And then I realized it's because Battlegrounds got nothing before, right? Like until the battle pass, Battlegrounds players literally got nothing. So getting something is just kind of strictly better than getting absolutely nothing. But Battlegrounds is not at the same level, not even at half the level of arena, which means it's at a way below half level compared to constructed. It's kind of crazy, and I don't know if they're going to change that or not, but it's crazy to me that no one has kind of complained about this. Like for the Battlegrounds players who are listeners, like how are you completing your battle pass? Like I'm guessing you're also playing arena or constructed, because there's no way you can do it just by playing Battlegrounds. It was kind of advertised as like do whatever you want, but like you can't do it.
Yeah. Back when I was still playing Battlegrounds, this was like in November and December-ish. I remember it was incredibly slow. It was very, very slow. And this is even when I was like playing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get past it by just pure brute forcing it. But yes, you can tell that the Battle Pass obviously does not favor BG players. Whether or not that was intentional, as in they don't want you to play BGs, I have no idea. But I totally agree. It's been there for the longest time. And I think people just don't really complain about it because I have no idea why. I really have no idea.
Yeah. So yeah, just if you're trying to complete quests and you've been playing BGs, like think about playing Arena or Constructed just to get through the quests. I'm keeping an eye out. I was planning to just do BGs until the expansion releases, but now I might spice some Arena in just to complete my weekly quests. Because I don't play like that much, right? Like I play like twice a week plus maybe a little bit on Sundays if we get if we have a short Lightforge or Coop.
Okay. That's it for Arena talk for now. Let's talk a little bit about Battlegrounds. Now, nothing new has happened in BGs. I check out Bob's Tavern subreddit a decent amount, and already you see people getting bored of the current meta. Just nothing has really changed. We talked about how people in general don't like the taunt meta. So these days,
It's
Bob's
not a
Tavern is just
taunt
full of
meta.
complaining.
So few people do taunt. Stop calling it the taunt meta. It's the normal meta. This is what happens when you
The
don't put bells
normal
and
meta.
whistles
Okay.
into the
Uh-huh.
game, right? When
Yeah.
you
All right.
don't have these fancy prizes and these overpowered heroes, like not super overpowered anyway. There's clearly ones
Uh-huh.
that still need to be nerfed. But you don't have like a dominant hero. You don't have like fun spells. This is what the game should be, right? Like this is what the core of the game is. The taunt stuff is just it's not like warping the game or anything. It's very, very slightly nudging the game in a direction.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. So, what I want to do today was a little bit of a guide on Battlegrounds. I've done guides that walk you through the thought making process when you go through your turns. I've done guides that tell you how to make reads, do all of this stuff. Today, I wanted to do a little bit of a primer on each tribe, give you some tips that might be holding you back, that are very tribe specific, whether it's how to go into a certain build, whether it's mistakes that I see a lot of people, even some leaderboard players, making on stream. It's Ranger Dreads. But if good players are making these kind of, I'll call them mistakes. I think a lot of people are making these mistakes. And once again, I'm going to say I don't play perfectly, but there are things that I think everyone can improve on. So let's go through the tribes one by one.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Taunt Comp, even though it is, according to Adukta, not the Taunt meta.
I
So,
mean, it's not the taunt meta. You see taunt comps less frequently than like at least two other comps, like just off the top of my head.
sure, they are not the end game comp. The reason why I call it the Taunt Comp is because they influence the meta in very important way because they are the mid game gatekeeper comp. Their effect on the meta is so strong, even though they basically never win the lobby. Like it's always that strong Menagerie, strong
Ah.
beast, strong dragon comp that's winning,
What I
right?
mean is, you have 8 players in the mid game. Like one of them has a taunt comp that
And
goes
that's the
like.
gatekeeper.
I mean, okay, but that means the 7 other ones are 7 other
That
kinds of
one player
comps.
influences the lobby so much. This is something I've talked about since like the beginning of Battleground. Like
Yeah,
when I
yeah, no,
finally
no,
got
I
Battleground.
agree. But then why don't you call it the beast meta or the elemental meta or the mech meta? You have
Because
just as many
no other
players doing
comp
those.
has suppressed the mid game or really just kind of lorded over the mid game like the taunt comp has in a while. This is like, sort of Tyrion levels of mid game dominance, with the exception that unlike Tyrion, there could be more than one, in a game, and also unlike Tyrion, Arms and Karajis, which are always at the end, actually do a decent amount of damage. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting. Like studying how the taunt comp has affected the meta is very interesting. But anyways, let me give you a few pieces of taunt comp advice. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, herp a derp, just buy arms, just buy Karajis. Sure. Okay. Let's go past that. All right. Let's open up our thought processes a little bit. Number one, we know that arms are good. We know that Karajis are good. A mistake I see people do is get a little bit too attached to Arm of the Empire. Arm of the Empire is great. I don't need to give you that, like, first level kind of advice like, oh, taunt your divine shields, even consider taunting your deflectos, taunt your cyclone elementals, and then put an arm there and then put your taunts further back. One thing that I see people do is they get a little bit too attached to their arms. And at a certain point, that attack doesn't really need to be higher. If what you want to do is think about, is the attack appropriate for this turn? And is it going to be appropriate for like the next 1 or 2 turns? Anything above like 25-30 attack is enough for even like the late game, approximately. Like it depends on the lobby, it depends on who makes it to the end, but that's pretty good right there. One of the things I see is that people keep arm when they need an injection of tempo or an injection of survivability, and the attack, at least for their minions, is already really high for that turn. And it's going to be high for like at least the next 2 turns. And just know the purpose of the Taunt Comp, if you're stuck with it, quote unquote. It's for you to just get as high as possible and then collect your MMR and then leave, go on to the next game. You're not winning. You're just not winning against any respectable other composition. You're going to bully some people. You're going to deal some damage. You're going to take your 3rd place, and you're going to people leave out of there, and that's fine. So you got to make the right plays in the middle there, and one of them is to ditch the arm, which I think a lot of people are really attached to, and I think some people ditch the Karaji rather than the arm, because we all get attached to permanent buffs, right? It's like, oh, it's permanent, I get to keep it. Karaji is the real strength of the Taunt Comp. Karaji is so powerful, especially if you have even like the tier 1 Acolyte, especially if you have Void Lord in there. But Karaji is like the real strength of the composition. So use the arm every single turn. Think about, it's like, is the attack appropriate now for this turn? Is it going to be appropriate for a next turn? Maybe even that. And then consider, do I need some more tech, some more strength for this upcoming turn? How do I manage that properly? Don't get stuck on like, oh man, I can accumulate so many permanent buffs, because sometimes it's just not useful. And especially we see these like 23 attack, 3 health taunt minions, and that's fine. You're good there. Get rid of the arm. Try to be as strong as possible. I'm not saying you should swing for the fences, but that arm probably got to get out of there sooner than you're leaving it in.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, which is you need to know what your taunt comp is doing. So it's not about getting to the best. It's not about making the best comp when you're at the taunt comp. It's not even about making the best taunt comp when you're playing a taunt comp. It's about making a comp that'll be enough. So once you hit enough, you should switch out of this idea that, oh, permanent buffs are better than temporary buffs. Once you have enough on the permanent buff side, temporary losing less health is better than permanent tempo stats, because you're going to get outscaled hard past a certain point. Like, no matter what you do.
So, once again, with Arm of the Empire, just know that you're not going to win anyways. If you're stuck, if you see outs here or there, obviously you got to evaluate to all the stuff. I think one issue for people is they get an Arm of the Empire. They're just like, oh my God, this is like the best tier 3 unit right now. This is like so good. I can get so many stats. Yeah. Why would I ever get rid of it? Get rid of it.
It's still a tier 3 unit, you don't keep tier 3 units around unless you buff them, right? A lot. Like, those are the only ones you keep around. And Arm of the Empire doesn't get buffed a lot. So it's a buffer. Like, think of it as, like, I like to think of Arm of the Empire as like similar, but, well, not that similar, but kind of like the same role as Sensei. Like, you put them in, it's good if you get it immediately. It's a little less good if you get it kind of like significantly later on. But either way, there's a point in which you still have a few turns left that you consider yourself, still playing and competing, but you should no longer have this minion on your battle board, band.
Right. It is similar in the way that Sensei is extremely disposable, I guess. Sorry, Sensei. But people see Sensei as very disposable. And arm should be more disposable in your mind than you probably think it is. So I think that's a good tip, and I think that is something that and I know I rail on like Dreads and make fun of them, but I see a lot of people doing this, and I'm not like secretly watching 4K, 7K, 9K players a lot, but I'm assuming you guys are making this mistake. Anyways, let's move on to beasts. When we talk about beasts, there's really two variants of beast comps. There's
I
the
agree.
there's the mama bear, death rattle, kind of like whether you just buff stuff on your board, or like you have a lot of death rattles that generate beasts, and then those grow big because of your mama bears. And then there's the Goldren Parrot Baron, huge buff composition. Those are very different, right? So one thing that people have asked me before is like, okay, how do you build towards one of them, and how do you kind of decide? So here's the thing: you are almost always you are almost always a mama bear comp before you are a Goldren Parrot Baron comp.
So see, you
Almost.
call it a mama bear comp. That's just tier 1 beast. Like I feel like you're stretching it to the like later stages of a tier 1 beast comp, because you're just kind of working with, like, if you want to see how tier 1 beasts work as a comp, like we have it on YouTube now. We did a co-op on it last week. And I think it really showed how powerful tier 1 beasts are at the mid game, right? Like we talk a lot about taunt comps being powerful in the mid game, but I maintain that a lot of like underused comps, like I talk about elemental comps, people know about mechs, obviously demons exist, pirates can do a decent job at it, and beasts can as well. People just don't like doing tier 1 beasts because they don't see other people doing it, but it works in the mid game.
This is true.
And then
number one, people do not enjoy tier 1 beast comp, and you don't see a lot of people doing tier 1 beast comp. These are both very true statements that I 100% agree with. So we have no disagreements on those two exact statements.
What I'm saying is this mama bear comp that you're talking about with like the death rattles and the whatever, yeah, it does work better with a mama bear, but it starts like kind of earlier than that. Right, like it can start earlier than that. Like it's not like you see a mama bear and then you are a beast comp. Like you could be a beast comp before then. Like I think back in previous metas, back in previous metas, you can like there are certain points, right, where you hit something on 5, or you hit something on 6, or you hit something whenever, and then you become that comp, right? Because you're really going for something. But the meta is just much more fluid now. Like the early game connects to the mid game, connects to the end game, and you're like it's the mid game just matters so much now that I think it like you can't just look at it and only talk about the end game for beasts or for any other comp, right? Like we didn't talk about it for taunts. Like
Mama Bear might as well be mid game these days.
Okay,
like
I mean,
what people are getting.
You're doing really well if you have Mama Bear in the mid game, right? But you can get Mama Bear in the mid game. You get anything tier 5 in the mid game. But even if you don't have a Mama Bear, like mid game beast that starts off as early game beast it's fine in the mid game. It'll start dying off if you don't get a Mama Bear soon. But
so for those of you guys who are actually looking for advice, there is no such thing as early game beast. I'm sorry.
Okay, just you could check out the YouTube. I don't know why Merps keeps denying it. This is like he's just very good at denying the existence of things that you can see with your own eyes.
Yes, I am.
Like the game is not that rigid. You go with what you get, right? Like it's Battlegrounds. It's not constructed, and the more open you are to possibilities and to comps, especially temporary comps, right? Especially in a meta that's not necessarily all about the end game, I think the stronger of a player you are. And in the case of Beasts, I think it's a mistake to think of Beasts as only starting at Mama Bear. Like it's the same type of game that you play without a Mama Bear, right? Like that's why these other minions exist before Mama Bear. It's not like, you know, beasts aren't a thing and then you get Mama Bear. Like that's very end game kind of thinking. And beasts are decent in the end game, but they're also okay in the mid game.
Okay.
And you're going to hear me make this statement about more than just beasts, about almost like every comp.
Right. You're also going to hear me say this. So disregard everything Adulta told you. There is no beast comp without Mama. Before then, you just happen to have beast.
But then
Anyways,
why would you not call that a beast comp? Like, it's just semantics at that point. If you have a board that's like,
that's
got
a
5
nothing, and you
beasts.
just happen to have beasts. That's what it
Like,
is.
that's just semantics. I would call, if I have 5 beasts and they synergize with each other, I would call that a beast comp. Right?
You can you
Like, why wouldn't you call
sure.
that a beast
We
comp? Why
can
would you
we can
decide to
call it
call it nothing?
we can call it schnookums if you want to call it schnookums.
Like,
We can do it
if you have
that way.
like 6 mechs on the board and you're like, oh, I don't want to call it a mech comp, I want to call it a nothing comp. I mean, you technically can,
Mhm.
but I think anyone looking at the comp will recognize that you're trying to build off some synergies with mechs.
All right. Anyways, you're obviously very happy with your schnookums composition, and I think that's fine. I will trek on with my little advice column. Okay. Now, what ends up happening is well, first of all, a lot of people ask the question, how do I get to the Goldren Parrot Baron composition? Because that's just, to many people, that seems like a reach. That seems like a leap, in which it's very strange how you exactly transition. And I would say that for a lot of people, the typical bridge there is through the Mama Bear beast composition, which, little asterisk, is not all hashtag not all beast compositions. Okay, are you happy about that?
Thank you.
um, and really, that is a good bridge for 1 to 2 turns. And the reason that's a safe bridge is because if you don't triple into the Goldren, which is really the key for you to flip, right? The linchpin, the really the fulcrum of the Goldren Parrot Baron comp is the Goldren.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's number 1. You need the Goldren. If you have the Baron and you have the Parrots, but you don't got the Goldren, well, that sucks. You can
You're
have
dead.
the only one that you have to have is the Goldren. Like, if you have Goldren and Baron but no Parrot, well, that sucks. But depending on the stage of the game that you're in, it's fine. If you only have Parrot and Goldren but you don't have the Baron yet, whatever. Depending on the point, like what turn it is, you could still be monstrously strong. You can't have Parrot Baron without the Goldren unless you're just running some selfless scam comp shenanigans. So the way that you typically transition, because people are right, it is kind of a leap, is the bridge tends to be the Mama Bear. And then you buy Parrots because they get buffed anyways. They work off of your Rat Packs. They work off of your, what was it? The Lions. They work off of your Wolves. So it's just a natural progression. And then if you triple and you get a Goldren and then you find the Baron, etc., you can slowly transition there. And that's the easiest way to get into the Goldren Parrot Baron composition, because I think that is very hard for kind of 4K, 7K players to kind of envision. Because yes, it is a leap. It is a big leap because you absolutely need this tier 6 unit. It requires you to roll into these things. So it's strange for someone to think, okay, so I went from not having this stuff to having this very specific composition. That is the easiest way to get there. There are always outliers in which I don't have like a Mama Bear and I haven't played this Mama Bear Death Rattle composition into Goldren. But that is the most standard way. And for me, like 80%, 85% plus of the time that I go Goldren Parrot Baron composition, it's through this Mama Bear bridge that I do for like 2 turns.
Yeah, I mean, that's the definitely best way to do it, because your problem with Goldren is that your other pieces of the Goldren comp is total trash for that area. Like, you are just going to die. If you try to go Beast and then you don't get a Goldren, don't go Beast, like, at that point, right? Like, you don't have that end game. So that's why, like, that's one of the reasons why I, like, never go for Goldren. Even if I see Goldren come up, I hesitate to take it on tier 6 if I don't have like other beasts or a Mama or anything, because there's a harsh transition period. Like, it's even harsher than like a Caligos. and it just depends, right? If you have enough health, or enough whatever, and you think you can make it, you can do it the transition. But having the mama bear or having a tier 1 beast comp, it's one of the benefits of a tier 1 beast comp is that if you do end up with a Goldren, you don't necessarily need the mama. But if you don't have a setup, you can't just become a Goldren comp. I can count on one hand the number of times I've ended up with a Goldren comp, like that was functional, rather than having Goldren and then dying, which I don't consider really a Goldren comp.
Okay, let's talk about pirates. Everyone's favorite spammy APM tribe. The tip I'll give about pirates is this is going to happen after you get your hoggers. And I want to make sure that when people are at that point, this is like the lucky mid game or the end game in which you are going infinite, which is 2 hoggers, slash, golden hogger, or super infinite. Super infinite is effectively a golden hogger plus another hogger. That's like super infinite. You will never run out of gold, and you're going to end every turn with 6-7 gold plus. If you are infinite, but especially if you are super infinite with pirates, don't be blinded by your salty looters. And by that, I mean, all you're doing is just pumping up these 2 units. And whether it's 2 non-golden salty looters, 1 golden, 1 non-golden, or 2 golden, because if you're infinite, you're just like cycling through, you're going to find the golden ones eventually. Don't be blinded by your salty looters. At the end of the day, they're just 2 giant stat sticks that don't have divine shield. I'm assuming you're not playing George. And can't get turned into anything. A little 1/1 Spore kills them. A Divine Shield of Malgadon wrecks both of them, actually, with room to spare, because after they kill both of it, then they can still spawn like 1/1s. So, what you want to do at this point, if your Salty Looters still aren't like 200, you can still build them up, but use that opportunity, especially if you're super infinite, to pick up the Selfless Heroes and pick up the Baron. Because what you want to do is you want to be the strongest Divine Shield, Poison, Murloc comp, effectively, that you can be. Because if your pirates are like 200 each, they're just like giant Murlocs, right? Giant poisonous Murlocs, effectively. If you are staying pirates and all you're doing is concentrating and being like, oh, I don't want to miss out on 50-50 stats, the 50-50 stats that you're going to gain by purely optimizing and tunnel visioning, rather than picking up Selfless Heroes, picking up the Baron, it's not worth it. It's going to be a lot better for you to pick up those things for free if you're super infinite in terms of gold, and then actually win the lobby like that. Because if you are just giant pirates, people can tech around you pretty easily, especially if there's Murlocs in the game. But even if they don't, remember, a single Malgadon with Divine Shield and Poison wrecks your 2 biggest minions. That's not something you want. It's too easy for you to die. And I'm not even talking about in like the 1st, 2nd place matchup. You could just die in like 4th or 5th place if people have poisons. So take your time, scout a little bit. And then whenever you go infinite or super infinite with your gold, make sure you're picking up the Selfless Heroes and Barons.
So what's the on-ramp for pirates right now? Is it just Hogger?
It's Hogger.
Like, you got to get 1 Hogger? And if you get a Hogger, do you need other stuff? Or can you just start with a Hogger? Like, do you need a Salty Looter already on the board just because it was, a good unit?
You don't need a Salty Looter on the board already. What you can do is, the Hogger is really the on-ramp. It's the first on-ramp because it makes everything a little bit cheaper. You need the Hogger, and that you preferably get the Salty Looter fairly fast after that. But you really want the second Hogger fairly fast as well. And if you're just missing some pieces here or there are ways for you to stay relevant. Because if you triple into an Eliza, or if you triple into a boat, that's a lot of strength, you can pick up just pirates that buff your board, do all of this stuff. It's going to
If
be
you
hard
have
for.
nothing, including no Hogger, and you triple up into an Eliza plus trash, right? Like maybe like like I don't
Mhm.
know, Imp Mama or like and then a boat, like not trash, but like tempo plays. Would you take the Eliza if you don't have a comp going and
But
like
I have
kind
a
of
Hogger.
you don't have a Hogger? Like, would you use Eliza? Like, is Eliza
Oh
an on
no,
ramp?
Eliza isn't enough unless, for example, you had a Scallywag
Right.
just
Like if you
in your
had
composition
some
already.
pirates, right? Like if you had one or two other pirates that are already okay, then Eliza becomes an on ramp. But you wouldn't
I
take Eliza with zero other pirates.
uh Sometimes, most of the time, I would say no. Um, but if you're healthy, then I would say yes,
Okay.
because then you can go with the infinite buff scam comp.
Right.
Yes. So
Okay.
I would say most of the time it ends up being no, but you always want to watch out because a single Eliza is the it could be a catalyst for going scam comp. So maybe I would just say in a lot of positions that you're in, no.
Okay.
And I don't want to just use it for a glorified spawn of Nazoth. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I perhaps might need the Imp Mama for a little bit more scam potential, a little bit more tempo on the board right there. But Eliza is the only one of those units that has some like true end game comp
Mm-hmm.
potential. So maybe, but
Okay. So that's good. So my philosophy for pirates is just to never touch it. So
that's fine.
it's just it's just kind of not powerful enough unless you hit it, and then if you hit it, you hit it real hard, right? Like
You hit it real hard, right? You either flame out because you tried and you stayed afloat, stayed relevant, you tripled, you got a boat, you've been buffing the attack of your pirates, but you just got dunked on by a decent Menagerie build before you could find your second Hogger. You just
mhm.
didn't find your second Hogger.
Yep.
That's a lot of games that you go pirates. It's part of the reason why pirates isn't one of the best compositions. You're vulnerable, and then once you hit super infinite, you feel like a god. But then, of course, a lot of people lose sight of what can actually make them win. So don't lose sight of that. Your salty looters don't have to be 400 beasts because those beasts die really, really easily to just one little small poison boy. Okay, let's talk about dragons. Um, there's not really many tips I want to give for dragons, so I'll just make this a little bit quick. Just recognize that dragons are fairly risky nowadays, mostly because of the gatekeeping factor of the taunt comps. They just deal a little bit more damage. It's harder to get out of the mid game uh, just a tad more nowadays because of the taunt comp. Because now that there is a taunt comp, and like you said, one person is going to be going it at least, maybe two people, right, in a lobby. And even if you don't face them, it instills that fear in other people where they have to tempo just a little bit more than they might want to in order to survive. And then that affects you as the ambitious dragon goer in some ways. And the real main problem is you get the Calgos and you can still die. Like the ramp up is not great. And of course, you always know that if you have the cow ghost, you don't have any dragons, etc., etc. It takes at least an additional turn for you to just buy those dragons. So
Yeah.
nothing new.
Like it's just you get Caligos early. You have 30 plus health. Go for it. Otherwise, there is no dragon cop.
Yeah, it depends on what turn you get it, but yeah, the ramp up for Calgos is quite slow, and it's tough to be in a position where you can just grab the Calgos and then be like, oh, okay, well, it's early enough, and if it's early enough, like super early that you're like, oh, I can buy dragons, you probably took some damage on the way there, so it's going to be quite tough for you. So dragons are fairly risky nowadays. It's not super common, as in previous metas, to see the giant dragon compositions winning the lobby. Obviously, they still do. It's all relative. Okay. Murlocs. We all love fishy boys. We all love all the stats that they gain. They're actually very similar to pirates in the advice I'm going to give you guys, which is know at what point the stats stop mattering. This is very important. It is very tempting, just like with the pirate composition and people just spamming pirates, buying stuff, seeing all the gold fill up. Oh man, it's like just slot machine, right? Like ding, 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 ding. You have all the lights flashing, like all this dopamine. With the Murlocs, it can feel like the same thing, in which you're just like, oh man, give me these stats, give me the health, give me all of that. Dopamine hit after dopamine hit. You always have to ask yourself, do these stats matter? At what point do I need to shift to some sort of tech, whether that is focusing on getting a ghoul, right? Maybe you got to roll more for the ghoul, rolling more for the selfless heroes. Maybe you got to go and hit a little bit of a home run with an Amalgadon, something like that. Just know what point do stats stop mattering. A really good tip is once you are entering the final, let's say, the final five, I won't even say the final four, the final five, you have somewhat of an idea on what two other, I'm assuming you're in a good spot, by the way. You're just big. You're big. A lot of your Murlocs are poisoned. They're like all nice and chunky. You're just hitting people left and right, but you're not doing a lot of damage because you're Murlocs. We've all been there before. There's 5 people left, including you. So there's 4 other people. You want to identify at that point immediately what 2 other people you expect to see in the finals. And then what's their size relative to yours? Can you outscale them? Will pure stats matter by the end? Now, people can do crazy things. They can shift. They can do this. They can buy that. But really, you know their composition by that point. So you know the beginnings. Like, people don't wholesale shift anymore because the brand Khadgar crazy stuff is gone. You have more information nowadays than the pre Khadgar nerf days. So evaluate at that point. Don't get so distracted by all of the buffs and just be like, okay, every single turn, if I just buff, that's good enough for me. Slow down. Look at, don't just look at your opponents kind of every single turn and evaluate your next opponent. When it goes into like around the top 5, and I say at that point because then you have enough time to adjust. Because even if you lose, I'm assuming you have time to adjust. If you beat them, you sure as hell aren't killing them immediately because you're only doing like 10 damage max to these people because you're freaking Murlocs. So when it's 5 people left, evaluate, predict, and then react accordingly. Okay, don't just get caught up on the stats.
Okay, so before we get to there's only 5 people left, I want to talk about the on-ramp to Murlocs, and that's that in this meta, the on-ramp to Murlocs is pretty much everywhere. Like, Murlocs are good in this meta. To at least get to the mid game, you know, you may switch over to a Menagerie comp later on if you you know, depending on where the chips fall. But at any point starting on tier 3, you can just turn your entire comp into a Murloc comp and go hard on that in the mid game and get to a pretty good spot. Like, this is something that you can't do particularly well with something like dragons or pirates, but if you just keep that in your mind, that like when tier 2 comes and you have some minions and some of them are Murlocs or something, and then tier 3 comes, you're like, oh, this Murloc is good for tempo. Like, look at your board. You may just have a very good start to a Murloc comp. Murloc comp does not need Bran. It needs Bran to get, you know, to the first place. But before you get there, like, what you should be worried about in this meta is not getting first place. It's getting to an okay place, right? And you do not need Bran for that. Like, in many ways, getting a Bran is counterproductive to doing well because, like a Caligos, you have like a turn. Like, it's not as bad as a Caligos, but you have like a transition period. So depending on how much health you have, like, that Bran could be a little dangerous. But even without a Bran, right? If you just are on tier 4 and spamming Murlocs, you are going to get your Murlocs to a very competitive size to be in the top. Like, not number 1, probably not number 2 unless number 1 knocks number 2 down, but the third best, sure. Like Merps is like, oh, assume you're doing well, right? Assume you're doing well, and then let's figure out how to get first. Well, I'm saying before you even get to that point, if things are not looking particularly good in other ways, or even if they are looking like good, obviously you don't have too much of a direction on tier 3. You could just go Murlocs and it'll be fine. Like you don't have to. You don't have to. Like it's a easy on ramp. It's an easy play, and it's good results. Right? You're gonna gain MMR. It's like almost like doing a taunt comp, but with more upside if you do get Bran and still have the health, whereas the taunt comp kind of caps out. So okay. I think it's just kind of superior to a taunt comp if you get set up for it. The good thing about the taunt comp is you don't have to set up for it. You kind of can just like start it whenever.
So getting Bran is actually nothing like getting Kalgos. That there is no delay. I will just say that.
I mean, the delay is once you get Bran, you've used up a tier 5 minion into 2-4. And you don't get to pump stats until the next turn. And then if you get
that so fast that it doesn't.
Well, yeah, it depends, right? It depends on whether you luck out or not. If you have like like 60, 70%. Too many
Murlocs work with Bran.
I mean, all the Murlocs work with Bran, but you have to hit the Murlocs. Like, and there's
you have to hit one of the many Murlocs, either the Cold Light Oracle, the Felfin Navigator, the Begurgle, the
hitting one of them doesn't make up for Bran. You need to hit 2 of them to actually make up for Bran as a tier 5 unit. And you have to hit them on the next turn, because presumably you're tripling up this turn on a level to get to Bran.
All of your units are like significantly better than a 2-4 plus the bonus from the next buff. Like at that point, I'm like, not all of your units are like 2020 chonkers, you know?
Yeah, but your opportunity cost. Yeah, but your opportunity cost for the Bran is
it's tempo
is a tempo tier 5 unit. That's your opportunity cost. Just like if you're looking at your opportunity cost for a tier 6 unit, it's not your weakest unit on your battle band.
I agree that there is a gap there, right? That there definitely is that gap there, but the gap is so much smaller than it is.
Yeah, I agree. I said it was smaller than Calicos. I don't disagree with that.
Smaller though.
Well, you have a gap that's going to cost you some life about 1/3 of the time. Like, some significant chunk of life. We're talking like 15 health difference here, about 1/3 of the time at least. It's not like I haven't played Murloc comps.
15 health?
Yeah, over the course of before you catch up to the tempo play. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I can agree with that.
15 health 1/3 of the time on average 5 health. No, that's definitely. I'm being conservative here. Like, think about the effects of putting a Bran on your battle band compared to just a regular
and with
tier
your
5
typical
unit.
Murloc composition, you're not replacing like a 2020. You're replacing something that's
stop saying you're replacing. Yeah, you're replacing a tier 5 unit. That's what you're replacing, because that's what you would have gotten otherwise if you didn't take the Bran.
Mm-hmm. And I'm saying it is made up like that. Like,
on your second hit. Mm-hmm. It is made up on your second hit, but you have to get to 2 synergies with Bran, and
No, because your typical like
you're buffing.
If you're buffing. About, like, I took a Bran and I didn't take a Sneeds, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Right. So you didn't take a Sneeds. So if you get a Primal Fin Lookout, that already makes it up, because you're going to get like 2 buffs. If you get the Felfin Navigator or the Cold Light Oracle or Begurgle, they all already make up for the
no.
The other
I disagree that if you get a Felfin or a Cold Light, that you make up for it.
Plus 2 health on everything.
Plus 2 health, not on everything. Plus 2 health on 4 or 5 units.
Yeah.
Which is like,
and those things are already big. Like the stats that you get off of the Sneeds example, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Sneed is not big. Like, it's a small thing. Even at the point in which you get it, it's not huge.
Right.
It's just like,
but you're talking about essentially 8 health to 10 health. You think 8 health to 10 health
more, and the health
on a 2-4 is better than a Sneed for that turn? I don't think so. I think you need 2 to really make up for the tempo.
It's 1. It's just 1, because the health matters much more on the stuff that you're putting on rather than the Sneeds that you're putting on there, and it is just like there. It's not doing If you get a sneeze super early, sure, it can value trade. It
Yeah,
can do
of
all
course
this stuff.
we're talking about not like super early, but like relatively early, right? Like because that's when you want to get your brand for Murlocs. Obviously, if it's like later in the game, you will take a brand, right? That's how you
Yeah,
scale.
but even then, your Murlocs are of a decent size, and then more stats on it, like it on average. Anyways, we have both made our points. Whether it is 2 or 1 or whatever, yes, there is a gap there. You obviously want Bran because whatever the case is, you close the gap pretty quick.
Well, you don't
So,
always want brand. You want the brand if you can close the gap. If you're very low health, then you don't want the brand, right? I think you usually want the
sure,
brand,
if
but
you are super duper low health, and yes, I can see scenarios in which you take the Sneeds rather than the Bran because you are scouting your opponent. You're at 5 health. You got to survive. You can't put the Bran in. Sure.
even if you're at 15 health, I think that's the line because then you're taking a risk, right? It could pay off. You may not lose 15 health. It's a less than 50% chance that you'll lose it and not recover it. But if you're like ending your turn on a triple, right, in into the Bran or the Sneed or whatever,
I would say the chance of you taking the Sneed is like 1% then. If you are at like 15 health. It just depends on
I would
whether or
say
not.
it's if you're at 15 health, okay, maybe if you're at 12 health, let's say, right? Because 15 was my line. If you're at 12 health, I would say your chances are about 1/3 chance to take the Sneeds, and then just like sell it at some point for better Murlocs rather than going for it with Bran. Because you're going to be able to solidify your mid game that way, and you're going to increase your ranks in the mid game, which is way more MMR than getting from second to first place.
Once
Like,
again, depends on your opponent and how strong I think they are.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
and then how.
It depends on your opponent, but the mid game is so important right now. You get so much of a difference in MMR by locking down the mid game versus not locking it down potentially, compared to getting first instead of like second or third.
Sure. We're getting into proper evaluation of your opponents then, because this depends on you nailing down, at least to some degree, the strength of your opponent.
Right. I mean, my point isn't that Bran is bad. My point is that you don't need Bran to get third place as Murlocs. That's my point. Like, you can like imagine you never hit Bran, and you're just hitting other Murlocs, that Murlocs buffing Murlocs. You can easily get third place.
You have to get a little bit lucky, but sure, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, assume you have a Murloc comp, right? Which is why you've kind of got Murlocs. But you wouldn't get lucky because you didn't get Bran, right? It's kind of fundamental to a Murloc comp. So you're already getting unlucky. My point is that even if you're getting unlucky in a Murloc comp on the Bran side, your downside protection is still very high.
The one thing I don't like about Murlocs is the fact that like once you lock yourself in, you have those like board buffers, but you just gotta hit those.
Yes.
And it is painful when you go -10 and you just don't get any of those. The board buffers, the Cold Light Oracles, the Felfin Navigators, the Primal Fin Lookouts, or the Bagurgles.
Yeah.
You need those 4 things. And it is very possible for you to -10, not find any of those, get chunked for a huge amount, and die. It's part of the reason why Murlocs are not the meta right now. But yes, if you get a little bit lucky, as in don't get unlucky, you can do decently well as Murlocs. And definitely on tier 3, they have some of the strongest buffs, and you can get that 1 to 2 turn spike with a board of all Murlocs. And then you fall off hard unless you are able to follow it up with something. Okay, let's talk about elementals for a second. Elementals, just like beasts, there are 2 variants. There is the Nomi variant, and there is the tier 6 elemental variant, I'll call it that, which is Lil Rag, and then the Lieutenant, and Gentle Genie, which isn't exactly like, Gentle Genie just works with everything. In fact, it works with Nomi as well. I will tell you guys why it doesn't fit into the Nomi composition. As of right now, the Nomi elementals are leagues stronger than Little Rag Elementals. Little Rag Elementals are not a thing. I have said this quite a few times. Little Rag is the worst scaling unit in the game relative to when you can get it and its potential. A lot of people fall into the trap of sort of tripling into a tier 6, seeing a Little Rag and saying, oh man, this is direction for me. It is not direction for you. Little Rag is trash, okay? This is where I see all the capital D colons. Little Rag is trash. It is the worst scaling unit. It is so bad. And many times it just lulls you into the sense of scaling when you don't have scaling from Little Rag. So let's talk about Nomi for a second.
But before we get there, you're talking about Little Rag by itself. If you have other elementals already, Little Rag is quite good. And I think that's the point of how Little Rag is intended to be.
No. Even if you have like a board full of other elementals, if Little Rag is your scaling, it's not enough. Like you got to find something.
Well,
else.
I mean, you'll have Party Rock, right? Like if you have a board full of elementals, you'll just end up with them.
So you've gone from Party Rock and okay, sure.
So you have Party Rock, and then you get the triple into the Little Rag, and it's fine. Is it great? No, it's not. It's not a amazing like scaling unit for tier 6. It's whatever, but that's what it's meant to do, right? Like it's not meant to be like, oh, I have a Caligos, now I throw out dragons that become a dragon comp. Like that's not what Little Rag is meant to do. It's meant to complement, because dragons don't like set up like that, whereas elementals can. So it's meant to complement your already set up elementals, or else
the problem with complementing that is the buffs are random. It's if you had like the Party Rock or Party Rock Domo setup, it does complement it somewhat. It's still fairly shitty for what it does, but yes, I would agree it works better in that scenario than just oh man, I got no direction, Little Rag is my scaling.
Yeah, like if you have an elemental comp and you get offered Little Rag or like, I don't know, Gas Coiler, take the Little Rag is just kind of my point. Like don't think of it as like, it doesn't give you direction, but if you already have direction, it complements that direction, right? It's like you don't take a Nadina and then say, oh, I'm dragons now. But if you have a whole bunch of dragons, just like you happen to have a whole bunch of dragons and you're hoping to get Caligos and you miss, you still take the Nadina over the Gas Coiler.
Sure. Let's talk about Nomi for 1 second, because I want to focus on the actual winning composition. All right. The one mistake that people make is leveling with Nomi. Just stay on tier 4. Stay on tier 4. Stay on tier 4. I'm going to repeat this. Stay on tier 4. There's not really anything great for you on tier 5. What you actually want to do is triple into another Nomi. You can eventually level. I'm repeating stay on tier 4 because I see too many people level too fast. And yes, I understand. Tavern Tempest is on tier 5. There's also a lot of other crap that you don't want on tier 5. Yes, you can pick up another Nomi as well. That's great for you. Most of the time, you just want to start building the buffs. It's kind of like Cthulhu in a way, where the earlier you start building up these buffs, the better it is. Just how we understand, you never miss hero power with Cthulhu. Why are you essentially slowing down your progression by leveling to tier 5 too early? I can't tell you guys exactly when to do it, because it depends on how many triples you found, how safe you are, etc., and whether your other triples got into Nomis already. But I would say if you're leveling to tier 5 before, let's say it costs like 2 gold to get there, if you're paying like 5 gold to get to tier 5, I think that's too soon. I think that's typically a mistake. Once again, I need to surround all of these scenarios in these like typically, sometimes kind of things. But that's typically too soon. Stay on tier 4 for a long time. When in doubt, if you're asking, is it right? Or maybe, no, stay on tier 4. Think of it in the ways of Cthulhu. You want to build up your buffs early and often, and you want to snowball off of that. Whenever you stop this progression, just like how if you, on one turn as Cthulhu, you don't hero power, you end up losing. And people understand this very well with Cthulhu, but with Nomi, they just think a little bit differently. So think of it as if you level too fast on tier 5, that's you as Cthulhu not hero powering one turn.
So you have a Nomi, you're doing your normal buys, you're about to triple up. Do you triple up into tier 5, or do you go up to tier 5 and try to triple up into one of the 6s, assuming you have like enough, mana to do both?
There's nothing really good on tier 6 for me. Okay. There really isn't. Because here's the way you want to think. If you have Rag, you don't need Rag. You have Nomi. That's not really a thing for you there. Do you want a Gar? No, not really. I don't want a Gar. I don't need a Gar. It's just not big enough. So that's trash. Do I want the Genie? Ooh, here's the one that chat like is always like, wait, Murphs. If you level, you can get a Genie. That's so good for Nomi. I agree to an extent, but lots of the time when that is relevant, that's also me putting a weak unit on my board. Now, unless I'm selling Nomi, that means I have a Genie and at least one Nomi on my board. That's 2 weak units. Now, sometimes I can afford that. Lots of times I can't. And I need that additional like 30-30, 40-40 unit on my board to make sure that I'm staying relevant. So yes, it's more econ, it's more greed, it's more buffs. Do I need more buffs at that point? No, because I have been staying vigilant, staying low, getting my buffs in place, and I'd rather just have that extra 30-30, 40-40 unit on the board than reaching. I have to hit the Genie first, by the way. Getting the Genie, putting it on my board, having 2 weak units, and then hoping that I don't get chunked. And then on the next turn, after that, once again, guys, we got to think 2 steps ahead. After the turn in which I leveled to tier 5, I got the Genie, I put it on my board. My weaker state didn't matter. And then the next fight, am I keeping Genie in there? I have to do it again, right? So this is what you have to consider. And even if you survive the first battle and you're like, clapping at yourself and be like, oh man, I got that econ, it's so good. Are you keeping that Genie in there for another one in your next battle? I don't know. I mean, it depends on the matchup, but I don't really see it. I think you have to win the battles, and in order to do that, you can't really do the Genie. So we've established Rag sucks, Gar sucks. Genie, while a lot of people think it's like, oh man, it's like the perfect complement to Nomi, really isn't. So what is there on tier 6 for me? Nothing.
Fair.
Yeah. I think that is a little bit eye-opening for some people, where they're just like, wait, come on, you can get these tier 6. And Murphs, I've thought about it. Like, Genie is really good. Well, think about your next battle, and more importantly, the second battle after that, right? And when people get the Genie and play it, and then the second battle, if you play a lot of BGs, this is happening in your head. During the second battle, suddenly you're just like, oh, can I keep this Genie? Can I actually keep this Genie? Because that's in the place of like a 40-40 at that point. Something just huge, something really big. Or if not 40-40, you're single Nomi. Like a 25-25 at that point. That's still a huge difference at that point. I don't know if you can do it. You don't know if you can do it, right? And you're just like, oh man, is it worth taking like, I don't know at that point. Like the swing damage is huge, right? Is it worth taking that damage? You remember that, okay? You listening to this, you remember that. You've thought of that. So why are you so tempted to do it one more time and torture yourself with this gentle Genie? Like, oh God, I can still get more stuff. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Even the best case scenario, it's not worth it. So this is why you stay at tier 4, because literally nothing good comes out of tier 6 for you. You are so safe and so stable playing tier 4 Nomi and just doing your like mini Cthulhu thing, right? Like your mini Cthulhu, except you can actually kind of win. You can actually kind of win, especially if you triple into another Nomi and start building all of this stuff. That's so much better for you. Don't get tempted by all of these shitty tier 6 elementals that don't do anything for you, okay? That's a trap. Tier 6 elementals is a pure trap right now. Don't fall into it.
It works well with tier 2 elementals. You're just not seeing the big picture. Yes. But seriously though, that is really the only role for tier 6 elementals. They're pretty trash.
They're pretty trash.
it's not like don't ever take them, but don't think of them the way you do like Caligos or like maybe even Goldren, even though I hate Goldren. Just tier 6 right now, like honestly, I feel like tier 6 is kind of trash outside of tempo. Like we just went through a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like what's on tier 6? What am I doing on tier 6? I'm hoping usually for a tempo unit. That's the only reason why I go up to 5 to level to find something on 6.
Yeah, it's a tempo unit, or Amalgadon to complete your
Right.
thing. But once again, it's really only Calgos that provides some sort of direction and everything. But yeah, Amalgadon, that's a finishing piece. That's not uh, a foundational uh, scaling unit. That's a finishing piece where it actually benefits from you being set up. So yeah, I agree. It's not a very tier 6 friendly meta right now, especially if dragons are out. If dragons are out, it's like like there's yes, people will finish off their composition with tier 6 units, but no, there's nothing that you should be reaching towards. Uh anyways, let's talk about mechs. Just one small thing with mechs. Don't taunt all of your resets. Make sure you have a free roaming, I'll call it that, reset in order to maximize your strength. I think a lot of people are. We know that Divine Shield taunt is good. If you have like an egg and a rover, or even if you have 2 eggs, once the second module comes along, it's up to you on whether or not you want to take it. But if you take it, make sure you do not put it on your only other reset. You got to make sure you have at least one free, I'll call it free floating reset because it's not taunted. Um, so what ends up happening is you have your deflectos, your 2 deflectos first. They hit into your taunted reset, and then your free floating reset is there like a couple units afterwards, so that they have a chance to hit into, let's say, your deflectos, and then your free floating reset goes in, gets you that value that you want as a mech composition. A mistake that I see people make is they actually taunt up single one of their resets. It gives them 0 chance for extra value on their divine shields, and they have a much worse kind of percentage in battle because of it. It's even worse because they spent money to weaken their composition. They spent money to do something to taunt both of those resets. You never want to do that. Don't do
So
that. Have a free floating reset.
I would say you are imagining a comp with more than one deflecto. Your comp has only one deflecto, then, and you have the opportunity to taunt it with a divine shield taunt. You have to make an evaluation, but I think in that case it's usually worth it unless it's a very small reset.
It depends on the thing that you are potentially looking to taunt up.
Yeah.
If you have 2 things that are of similar size, I'd still want a free floating one. Like sometimes you just don't have a choice, right? It's like, well, it's the only other thing I can taunt up, or yeah. But so many times you just want that free floating reset, even with one. You just want that opportunity. You want that chance because otherwise they're always gonna hit in, and you never get the chance before your deflecto.
Yeah, but
Is
it's
able
the
to
chance to
hit in.
get one. Like we're talking about, it's a chance and not like a great chance. Like usually like a 50-50 chance, unless you like nail down your opponent's comp. It's 50-50
Yeah.
at best to get a divine shield on what is your like essentially your highest attack unit. So you have to weigh that against how much you're losing out by not divine shielding. But yeah, obviously there is a like 50%, right? So do the math. Like I don't think there's no world in which you taunt a second reset, but you would obviously like lean heavily against it if you have other options, or if you have like 2 deflectos, don't have a free roaming reset. At that point, it starts being super worth it. But also at that point, your other deflecto is kind of a reset too, so you start losing. It starts no longer being 50% and being more like 30% or something.
Yep. I'm not going to talk about demons really. I'll give you guys one piece of advice. Demons just synergize very well with taunt comps. So you can try to do like a hybrid demon taunt comp. And when I say hybrid, I mean, don't be afraid to be like 70% of a demon, 30% of a taunt comp, kind of a thing, but they work pretty well together. So look out for that. I think that people tend to maybe focus a little bit too much on the strict demons and miss out on some good opportunities with a demon taunt hybrid. Lastly, Menagerie. We've all played Menagerie for the longest time. We know that how it's so freaking good. One important thing: if you are Menagerie and there are Murlocs in the game, you have to have one Murloc in your Menagerie composition. There is no discussion here. You have to have a Murloc. Between the poison potential of a Murloc to instantly increase the attack of your Murloc to infinite, to Primal Fin Lookout to get you free buffs on one of your units, and if you level to tier 6, a decent chance at getting the Amalgadon. You have to have at least one Murloc in there. Now, there can be exceptions, of course. Like you're super low, like it takes a little bit to like put it in, but you really got to work Murlocs in there. Like if you have opportunities, you have to include a Murloc. You can start buffing. It's just so easy to buff Murlocs, and Primal Fin Lookout makes it so economically advantageous for you because you get free buffs so often. You don't get free buffs with like other classes. You just don't, except, Salty Looter and the Gambler. But Pirates are one of the shittiest tribes to put in a Menagerie because their buffs are so crappy. Murlocs are by far the best, and that is an easy road to Amalgadons. So look at all of your Menagerie games. If you're ending a decent amount of your Menagerie games without a Murloc, and by decent I mean, if you even have like 20% of your Menagerie games without a Murloc, that's too high. Include Murloc in Menagerie if it is available, because that just, you're missing too much by not including it.
All right.
That's it.
What would you take? Lightfang or super early? Lightfang or Bran?
Do I have a Lightfang board?
You have 3 tribes.
And what do you mean by super early? How early is this? And what character am
I? You are a patchwork. You you tripled into. I'm just picking a neutral hero. Okay, fine. You're Lich King. And then you tripled into a tier 4. It doesn't make a difference. And then you tripled into a 5.
Lightfang. And this is me like aggressive. Like, I got it a turn before.
Yeah, you got it super early. Like you got it as soon as you normally leveled to 4. Huh?
I got it on 8 gold.
9 gold, let's say. 8 gold or 9 gold. Let's say 8 gold or 9 gold. Does it make a difference? Does it change your answer?
Yes. It makes a huge difference. If I get it on 8 gold, it's like, and then I have 3 tribes. Mm-hmm. Do any of them have divine shields?
No, just regular minions right now.
It's close. I would say on 8 gold, I would tend to favor Lightfang. And of course, like a lot of it is specifics, right? But with the information you've given me, I would say if it's 8 gold, I tend to favor the Lightfang because it's all about space. It's all about the space that the unit can buy you. Bran takes resources. Mm-hmm. Lightfang buys you space. And in the early game and in the mid game, space is so important. The freedom to level and the freedom to make decisions like that, that is so very, very important. So I will say, given what you have told me, if it's on 8 gold, and just the way that I'm envisioning the leveling going, it would probably be the Lightfang. Probably.
But on 9 gold, you'd go with the Bran?
Yeah, my board on average is looking more different. The Lightfang isn't buying me as much space. So the benefit of the Lightfang has been dampened to a point where I would probably take the Bran more often. So on 8 gold, I think I take the Light Fang more often than the Bran. I don't know the
Mm-hmm.
exact numbers. And on 9 gold, I take the Bran more often than the Light Fang. And the exact percentages are like, I'd need more
Right.
information, but I can confidently tell you that. On
Okay.
8 gold, Light Fang, a decent amount more than Bran. And on 9 gold, Bran, a decent amount more than Light Fang.
Hmm. Murlocs aside, I do Light Fang all the way through 10. And then on 11, I'll probably 50-50 Light Fang and Bran.
I don't know about that.
This meta is all about the mid game. All about the mid game. And Light Fang is better for the mid game than Bran.
Here,
Like
the
I'll
is,
not do
like,
Light Fang sometimes and do Bran if I have like a comp, right? Like if I don't have 3 tribes. But with 3 tribes, doing Light Fang.
so here's the way I kind of see it. Like I was talking to you about like Overwatch before this, right? Because I've started playing Overwatch a little bit just recreationally, but I've also started watching some like videos because I just got tired of completely sucking at the game.
I mean, you get so much game knowledge in that game.
Well, the thing is like it's so interesting because a lot of people rage about like Overwatch and everything, and it's so and I've watched a lot of videos of pros like these are top 50 players
Right.
explaining the way that they think about the game and they break it down, and lo and behold, it's very similar to, for example, how I think about Battlegrounds and just information processing and just sort of like ex ante kind of stuff. And that's not really a surprise. Strategy games are strategy games, and the way you think about them, the way you process information is very similar. Now, Overwatch is a little bit mechanically more difficult than Battlegrounds.
I don't know. If you watch me play Overwatch at Battlegrounds, you'd think Battlegrounds is harder than Overwatch.
It really boggles the mind for you. I truly don't understand. Now, the way all this talk about creating space, Light Fang is kind of like a good Reinhardt in a way, in which what Reinhardt actually does is by moving up, it carves out space, and the more space that you have, the more choices and the better positioning your team has in order to make plays. So they are able to gather more information. They're able to have more freedom to work in this space, because the way that you should always visualize it is like, what is the space that the enemy is occupying right now, and what is the space that you're occupying? And it's sort of like you can look at it in terms of a risk board, right? In terms of like, oh, what is red, what is like blue, and how is it shifting like back and forth? And the best Reinhardts carve out as much space advantageously for your team. And that's really what the Light Fang does if it's early on. It carves out that space so you can be more aggressive. You can make those better choices and have access to good things. But let's say as the fight like, and that's early on, right? Like you're able to get your Rhine early on before the engagement has begun. But if the fight has already begun and one of your kind of backline has already been picked, and then your Rhine is like, all right, I'm going to try to carve out positioning. That's just not as effective. Like they can be a god, but it's hard for them to impact the fight because they're just not able to carve out the space because they're getting there a little bit late. It's the same thing as the 8 gold versus 9 gold Light Fang. They're still good. Like a good Reinhardt is good, but the time in which they are able to get established affects all of your outcomes significantly so. And then at that point, I'd much rather have Bran, which you can see as like the carry DPS, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's just it's a numbers game. You're losing out on a series of stats, and by getting it later for the Light Fang. Whereas for Bran, you're not losing out on as much stats because you normally need to set up a little more for the Bran anyway. So like and in the end game, Light Fang is like you could throw the Light Fang away, whereas you never throw the Brand away until the very very last, like this is do or die moment. But I don't know. I think even at like 10 gold, it's super early in the game. In the mid game, that Light Fang can still like have that impact. Whereas I think you're already thinking at that point about like, how do I take number one? And I'm just not
Well,
worried about it.
so I agree that like turn 10 sorry, I guess 10 gold or
Yeah,
even
10
turn
gold.
10,
Sorry, 10 gold.
whatever. 10 gold. It's not too late for Light Fang generally, right? Like just I totally would take like a fresh Light Fang on 10 gold and be very happy about it. It's that question. It's in that specific scenario of like which one,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
It's
on
Light Fang v Brand.
yeah, Light Fang v Brand on a discover kind of
Yeah.
sort of choice on that turn, and yeah. But I definitely don't want people to misunderstand me. And like 10 gold Light Fang is still quite good. And a lot of times I'm like, direction is iffy. I see a Light Fang on 10 gold. I'm like, oh yes, super duper good.
All right. Well, that's all the comps in Battlegrounds. I like going overall, but I don't know. I think it's a pretty interesting meta. It's not like the. I've also been out of the game for too long. That I'm comparing it mostly with metas that have happened like 9 months ago and before that, and just seeing where the game is. It's in such a better place now than 9 months ago. Which I mean, you expect that would happen, but it's good to see it actually happening because sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes games get worse. And it's good to see that even at its kind of basics, before the quill bores, after the spells, Battlegrounds is still improving in its kind of like base form. And God, I really wonder what the hell quill bores are going to do.
I have no idea. The only clue they gave us was they have a unique way of generating resources that you have to manage.
Yeah.
So some sort of Quillbore resource.
So I'm playing Arena and not Battlegrounds once the quill bores come. At least until they start rotating. Because in the first like month or whatever, right, you're gonna have quill bores every single match. That's how they do things. All right. Yeah, I guess that's it for this week. Any question from the goat or last words?
No, we've gone on for too long.
We
That's it.
have. I mean, we wanted to cover all the comms. Battlegrounds is a complicated game. So next week we are going to probably talk about some of the cards that like look interesting or whatever. Just have a chill Lightforge and like hang out. And the week after that is the large 6-hour Lightforge where we go over all the all the cards and their stats and their ratings. So look forward to that. That will be on the 28th, and it'll be available. That's live on the 28th, and will be available in podcast format on our YouTube on the 29th. And the game is going to release on the 30th. Awesome. Okay, so until next week, this is Adwicta.
This is Merp. See you guys.
Bye.